For MFA Incorporated, I'm Tom Steever on Brownfield with Dr. Tony Martin, staff veterinarian for MFA and manager of MFA's Animal Health Department. It's almost 6 months since the Veterinary Feed Directive was put in place. What's been the effect?
It's been mixed so far. Overall, the best thing I could say is, or the first thing I would say is that it's been pleasantly even-keeled as approach. I think that's a testament to the many meetings that were presented across our trade territory before the actual law went into effect. But it's created some head scratching, some still questions yet to be answered and smoothed out. But by and large, it's been a fairly smooth transition into having to acquire these Veterinary Feed Directive documents to obtain these regulated antibiotics for producers' use.
I'm sure I'm not the first one to think to ask questions about this, but what are some examples of questions that you're getting about it?
Well, probably the biggest questions have been related to, I'd say the most common one that I've seen is the situation where you have more than one family member together with a livestock operation, such as a father and two sons or something like that, or a set of siblings that run livestock together. Are they required to get a separate VFD for each owner, even though all the livestock are run and managed together? And that's been the one that has come up the most to me. And in general, the answer has been, with the approval of the FDA, that if they're managed as one group, one VFD can cover the entire group of animals, even though they may be owned by different individuals as a part of that management group.
So it sounds like people are kind of learning as they go.
They are, and I've been very appreciative of our state inspectors who will eventually be involved in this process, and the FDA's approach, even involving their inspectors, that during this, at least the initial 6 months, if not the entire first year, they intend to approach this whole process as a learning and education opportunity so that we all can get on the same page and get the wrinkles worked out rather than coming at it with heavy-handed enforcement.
For instance, I understand adding chlortetracycline to mineral is illegal now. So how common was that before the directive?
Well, it's more common than you might think, but it had been fairly common for producers to, on their own, take a more concentrated form of chlortetracycline, such as a 10 or a 50-gram product, and add it on their own to a previously unmedicated, commercially produced mineral. And that is illegal. It actually was illegal before, but there wasn't anything that was actually preventing them from doing it. And if they wanted to play loose with the law, there probably isn't anything that would prevent them from doing it now, but it is an illegal practice, and it shouldn't be done anyway. As I've explained to producers who have brought that question up, is that when you add a medication like that to a previously commercially formulated mineral, you don't know what the addition of the medication does to the actual consumption and therefore benefit that you would get out of that mineral you'd purchased to meet the nutritional needs of the animals. So it makes sense to only have those products added under some kind of an approved formulation.
We were going to a lot of veterinarians before the directive went into effect and having them either prepare producers for the upcoming event. So 6 months in, what is something that you would tell producers now, getting a half year into this?
Well, I'd remind them, just as what was on the first of my list when I was doing the meetings, is that it's important to, if you don't already have one, to establish a veterinary client-patient relationship with a veterinarian. That's probably been the most difficult obstacle in some areas of our state for producers to do that, because they haven't been regularly using a veterinarian. And by establishing that relationship, then the line of communications gets opened up to where it makes this entire Veterinary Feed Directive process much easier to deal with, and plus it opens a door to conversations that will create some improvement in management, nutrition, and even health protocol activities within the herd that may further minimize the need for antibiotics and definitely better direct the judicious use of it, which I think by and large our industry has been doing even prior to this law, but it would help improve things. So that veterinary client-patient relationship is an important, integral part of it, and that's what I would give my most encouragement to the producers to do, is to solidify that relationship and make it beneficial to them and their production operation.
How does the VFD affect MFA as a feed distributor?
Well, it puts a lot of pressure on us as a set of dealer locations, because it is the dealer location, the retail location, that is the first one to interact with that producer who is wanting to access those antibiotics and historically has made use of them. And now we have to tell those producers that we can no longer sell you those products unless we have a valid veterinary feed directive on file for that producer. And so we become kind of the first line of interaction with the customers. And there have been a few that have come in even during this first 6 months wanting to access those products and swear they didn't realize they needed the VFD. So it's put a lot of pressure on our dealers to be well informed enough that they're ready to have that communication with a producer who some may be upset that they can't buy the product they've been buying before and maybe don't totally understand the process. So we not only have to kind of be a part of the education end of it, but we also have to then be the first line to look at these veterinary feed directives that are being presented and make sure they're completely filled out and will match up with products that we can make available to them. So we become, in some respects, the first filter to make sure that everything's in place according to what the law states it needs to be.
So you were saying that you would have to tell a producer that you can't do business unless you do have a VFD on file with them. So how do they make sure that that veterinary feed directive is on file with you?
Well, they have to have that relationship with the veterinarian and have the conversations that lead to the veterinarian writing the document up and properly filling it out and signing it, and then a copy either sent by the veterinarian to our dealer locations or is provided to our dealer location by the producer bringing it in. And once it's in our hands at the dealer locations, it's loaded into the dealer's system as far as their management of that particular customer's account, to where we can readily access and tell in future instances where the producer comes in and wants to buy the medicated product, is there a veterinary feed directive on file? Is it still active and not expired? And does it match up with what the producer is wanting to buy? So we have to incorporate those veterinary feed directive documentations into our accounting and sales systems in order to make sure we stay compliant with the dealer responsibilities in this law. It is still a work in progress. There are some things that have to be ironed out, even at the Food and Drug Administration level, the national level where this legislation came from, in terms of how it's managed and how we go forward. But I encourage everybody just to keep an open mind about the process and use this as an opportunity to further prove to the consuming public that the livestock that we are producing as a part of the human food chain are produced under the guidance and direction of proper use of antibiotics, very judiciously used and not used in any way that will lead to things that should be of concern to the consumers who are eventually taking the product home and preparing for their families. We just need to keep a level head about it and work through the details and make the best of it.
Dr. Tony Martin, staff veterinarian for MFA Incorporated and manager of MFA's Animal Health Department. I'm Tom Steever on Brownfield.